Hello, everyone. Marc Johnston here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about handling problems with communication in your marriage. So, I work a lot with couples who are in crisis. Oftentimes, I'm working with just one individual who wants to make the relationship work. And so I run into problems of communication quite often. And what I've found is that it typically boils down to one of two things. Why there is no ability to talk. It tends to be that conversations don't feel comfortable or safe, or the spouse sees no purpose in opening up, as in the cost is too high, or the conversation is predicted to be ineffective. Um, So I wanted to talk about those two things. How do we get around those two things? And this is going to involve making it safe and creating common goals and purpose. So you start to wonder, okay, why can't my partner open up? Why won't they talk to me? Why do they just stonewall and sit in silence? Why do they avoid conversations? Perhaps your partner has been hurt. Perhaps they have never learned skills to discuss deeply what is going on. Perhaps that they've learned that talking about those things, they aren't able to express themselves or speak up or be heard. For the most part, what needs to happen is, well, like I said, we need to make it safe. And to get around a lot of these problems, safety comes from acceptance. I mean, think about it. I want you to think about a time when you really truly felt accepted, genuinely accepted by those around you, and did not feel safe. It doesn't happen. Uh, Safety comes from acceptance. It comes from predictability. It comes from, being able to expect that acceptance. And a deep, intimate conversation between you and your spouse can only, they're only going to be able to open up if they can predict that they will be accepted by you. This can sometimes mean that you need to perhaps examine how you're reacting to your partner. It can sometimes mean that you need to help your partner to have a bit more of a voice. Um, this, though, I will admit, does become a bit more complicated, especially if you or your partner have caused some harm. And if there is damage present in the relationship, it becomes really a difficult thing to demonstrate that acceptance. What if your partner has committed adultery? Or what if you have been the one who has been unfaithful? What if your partner becomes angry and lashes out verbally when they open up, or vice versa? In all these cases, the problem is that of not having a healthy way of talking about concerns and problems. The partner who has committed adultery does not feel like they can um, talk about the concerns in their relationship. They don't feel like they can talk about the affair. The person who becomes angry and lashes out doesn't have a more healthy way of expressing themselves in a more calm manner. And one of the easiest ways to get all this out of creating acceptance and safety is to demonstrate this. And you can do this by bringing out those difficult subjects yourself and displaying acceptance and or reducing cost. I quite frequently teach my clients to call out emotions, any emotions that are present. I tell my clients to notice when their partner is feeling upset or concerned or angry, or if they're brooding. Um, this sort of act, especially if you then treat that emotion with care, can absolutely display this acceptance that you're looking for, display the safety. It can help make it normalize the expression of emotions. If there's other really hard things to discuss. It can be monumentally difficult for someone to admit to a shameful act. It's equally difficult for a spouse to share when they feel that if they feel that they're going to be hurt. And if you're the one to bring up their shame or their hurt and express some safety, it can pave the way for your spouse to be open as well. I can think of many examples of this. I often will see when there is something serious like an affair, when it's discovered, many people who are in the middle of an affair are much more willing to share information once it's been discovered, once they already kind of can see that, maybe the reaction isn't quite as bad. I'm thinking specifically of some clients of mine as well who've had communication problems. John and Cassandra, for instance, had a very difficult time talking about the relationship because of bickering. And once Cassandra started asking John about his side of things, giving him that voice, communication flowed much more easily. And another example, Jessica found that her husband, Mike, never wanted to talk about their marriage trouble. But once it was identified by Jessica that her husband didn't want to talk because he thought she would complain about the things that he did, well, Jessica was able to give some assurance that she just wanted to ask him some questions and listen. This helped Mike immensely in opening up. In these cases, the spouse who was really gunning for the marriage was able to make it safe by identifying, bringing to light what was going on and discussing it in a safe manner. By paving the way, by expressing acceptance, by making it safe, it can quite often get around a lot of the roadblocks where you find a stonewalling partner, one who doesn't want to talk about things. But what about just the very hard-nosed, very straightforward individuals, the people who just basically say, well, talking doesn't solve anything. There's no reason to talk. This is the other problem that usually prevents communication within a relationship. Maybe whether it's that they feel like talking leads to nothing or it's just painful, they feel like it's painful and it takes time. There are ways around these roadblocks. You can get around this sort of problem by having common goals and or possibly setting expectations or limits on the conversation. Common goals almost always reduce resistance dramatically. I've read entire books specifically on this subject about using the power of agreement to take away any sort of animosity or power in an argument. It becomes really difficult to fight against or to resist someone who's agreeing with you. So I often think about these sort of situations, and I compare it almost to almost like a sales sort of situation. If I was walking down the mall, for instance, my goal was to go shopping for some clothes and then get some food. Well, I'm walking down with that goal and I am stopped along the way by a very pushy salesperson who wants to sell me a car or some sort of expensive appliance. Well, I'm going to get upset with that salesperson, especially if they prevent me from reaching my goal to get food and clothes. When our goals are at cross purposes, more resistance is created. But if instead that salesperson said, you know what, how about I buy you some lunch while I talk about this product? I'm much more likely to cooperate with that salesperson because now he is offering an easier way for me to get my goal. The same sort of thing can be done in marriage on a smaller scale. It doesn't have to be so goal-oriented. We can get people to open up if they feel like what we want and what they want is somewhere along the same lines. Even if your spouse is saying, you know what, all I want is a divorce. You can get some amount of discussion going on if you can acknowledge some of their some of how they got to that point. You're agreeing, it must have been really hard for you to come to the point where you're considering divorce. This is some small ways of agreeing with them. And people tend to drop the walls, drop the resistance, and further the conversation. It then becomes easier for you to get some more information out of them and find those common goals to work on. So maybe they don't want to talk about romance and connection, but maybe they do want to talk about respect. Maybe they do want to resolve some concerns about not feeling heard. Or maybe they want to discuss some way to be able to parent together. If your spouse is less willing to discuss getting help, but they do want more connection or sex in the relationship, then you have an avenue to open up a conversation. People will discuss difficult topics if they feel it will resolve concerns that they find important. So this is just some of what you can do to get around some of the difficulties in conversation. When you are having some marriage problems, it happens all the time, and you need all the tools that you can. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you watch some of the other videos in this series to deal with some of these first problems that a lot of people encounter. So if you like it, please keep watching. We'd love to give you some more tips and tools.